are back. We are in it to win it. Got Dave with me. I'm Bill. This is Gridiron 360. Thank you for listening. And we are going to wrap up the 2020 draft prospects for the NFL draft this Thursday. Out of the Pac-12. Ran down the top 5. Justin Herbert, quarterback out of Oregon. Austin Jackson, offensive tackle out of USC. Laviska Shenault, wide receiver from Colorado. Jalen Johnson, cornerback from Utah. Jacob Eason, quarterback from Washington. So now we move on to the number 6 prospect out of the Pac-12. And that is a gentleman from Washington, a junior, plays tight end for the Washington Huskies, Mr. Hunter Bryant. Hunter Bryant for the Huskies. Again, tight end, standing at 6'2", 248, 32-inch arms, 10 3/8-inch hands, so long arms, big hands. Ran a 4.74 at the combine, a 23 rep on the bench. Kind of a more of that athletic tight end. I think I saw a comp out there of Jordan Reed. How
about this? So, how about the comp to the fact that he is like Thaddeus Moss, almost to a T?
Yeah.
6'2", 248,
yeah, in terms
32.
of size.
He's got slightly longer arms, got about a half-inch bigger hands, about a couple pounds lighter. It's both 6'2". Like this, that's kind of a profile.
He is by a lot of
Not
accounts,
saying they're the same guys, but he's
by some
size.
accounts, he is the number 1 tight end in this draft. It's between him and our man Cole Kmet for the tight end for Notre Dame, from what I've seen for the most part. Okay?
Yep.
Let's see. I'll run down a few numbers of this man. It's a tight end, so I'll stay in 2019 most recently. 52 receptions, 825 yards, and 3 TDs. That's it's pretty good. Almost 1,000-yard receiving as a tight end is not too bad. Again, he had a guy in Jacob Eason throwing him the ball there, so obviously a target he must have liked. Yeah, Hunter Bryant. I mean, some of the I don't know when he'll go in the draft. I saw, a projection around 4 or 5. Tight end, it just depends. If you're in need of it, is this a guy you'd rather have? It's really a tale of 2 tight ends. It's probably more 1A and 1B rather than 1-2, because he is more of that. If you do comp him to Jordan Reed, maybe not a little shorter, but the athletic tight end, and not to say Clement's not, but he is more like Gronk. He's just this tall, big-bodied guy, a guy great end zone target, because he's just so tall.
Let's be honest, though. In a level.
Go ahead,
of
talk about
fairness,
Hunter for me, baby.
but just in a level of fairness,
I'm gonna have a stogish.
Everybody's talking about looking for Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski. Those guys are freaks. They just are. And so I think sometimes we have to be realistic about what tight ends look like in the NFL and good tight ends. And this guy, one of the things they said about him, which is probably somewhat true of Thaddeus Moss, and Thaddeus Moss has a later draft projection than this guy, but is that they're more like oversized slot receivers, meaning maybe not the guys that you bring in line to block a whole lot. But the truth is, Gronkowski did it, and they do bring Kelce in, but that's more out of deception. They don't have a prolific running game, and the best part of that guy's game is lining him off the line and having him go after guys. And you can do that at 6'2". He's got actually some wheels that really help him. So I think this is the kind of kid that, again, everybody's looking at, and I think that's part of the Cole Kmet love is the size on him. It's
right.
And you got to kind of look at, how are you going to use him, and what are you going to do with him? With the idea that I'm not going to find Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski in a draft. You just aren't very often. I mean, look at the Lions drafted, Hawkinson, number 10? That guy's not, right now, isn't even showing inklings of becoming those kind of guys.
It's hard to go in the first round on tight end unless you see something that just absolutely jumps off the page. I mean, the guy that was, probably one of the most known tight ends in the league in college this year is Thaddeus Moss, right? And he played for the national champs, and he is not even a top 10 tight end. So, I mean, tight end. It just depends. I don't think he'll go in the first 2 rounds. I don't know if any will go. If they do, I probably would think it'd be someone just falling in love with Cole Kmet and his size. So, all right, let's move on, though. The next guy, number 7 prospect out of the Pac-12 this year, is from I thought he was from California. Yeah, he's his birthplace is Rockland, California. It shows here his hometown's Nevada. He's a senior wideout for the Arizona State Sun Devils, and one of the guys that made the true freshman, what was his name, Jaden Daniels, brought in at quarterback, look really good for the Sun Devils, was this guy, wide receiver for the Sun Devils, Brandon Ayuk. At 6 foot 205, 33.5 on the arms, 9 3/4 on the hands. Ran a 4.5 40 at the combine. That surprises me. He seems faster than that. Maybe he just plays faster than that. Talk to me about Mr. Ayuk. I see a comp in there, and it actually 6 foot, not super tall, but I actually thought he was smaller than that. I see the comp there to Mr. Robert Woods, the wide receiver for a long time with Buffalo, now with the Rams. How do you feel about Ayuk? He has he has big play capability, this kid, and he definitely was a big contributor to that offense this year, especially in big games.
The analysis says that this kid's he's got to polish his game. He's got to become a better route runner. He's got to become a little bit more physical, which is tough at 6 foot. Here's what video says to me, though. That kid was open so many times. Like,
he was.
I mean, just open.
Wide
and
open.
I
saw him run right past people, too.
Yeah, the hard part is to project that. Does that project the NFL?
I saw him in a zone coverage scheme have, either a safety or a linebacker in the short field, and then another 12, 15 yards downfield is the corner waiting for him, and he just by both.
Yeah, he is a knack for getting open. That's what stood out to me.
Center fielder. I think he's a guy you could throw the ball out there, and he finds a way to track that thing.
Yeah, that's what I see in him. Like, and we watched him play, multiple times this year, and I that's just what I always noticed. Like, especially, it was funny because a couple of the times it was like where I really saw him get open on plays was busted plays. Like, he figured out how to find holes out there. And I mean, I remember Jaden Daniels just like winging it to him, like on a wing and a prayer, and he tracked it and pulled it in. And that's what I liked about him, is I just like guys that are wide open. And again, can you do that in the NFL and without, some of the good route running and the basic skills? That's tough because the NFL is just a different level. But I think this is a kid, and he has progressed. Remember, this was a JUCO kid.
Yeah.
So this is a kid that's kind of had to go through some tiers to get where he was, and that, that says something to me. A guy that can climb a ladder like that in a short period of time shows that maybe he is going to be a good student of the game and learn how to do some things. I think he's a complimentary type wide receiver coming out, but could be a very good complimentary type wide receiver.
Debo Samuel out in San Francisco. Though they don't have a lot, I don't think he was necessarily the main guy for them in terms of certainly not like labeled number one receiver, but drafted last year. He had a lot of speed, a lot of talent, very similar, I think, in regards to being able to. He just seemed to get open, and he's just can be electrifying with the ball in his hands, and he did a lot this year in his rookie season in San Francisco. Again, that complimentary piece.
Just something to note, I didn't know this, and this is just kind of the last little line written on here, was that he also went core muscle surgery in April.
I did see something.
I didn't know that. Yep. So that's always, I don't know. I got a little bug for that. I've just seen it a few times where, some of my teams have had that and it hasn't gone according to plan. I hope that's not the case because I like them.
Yep.
But I did see that.
Okay, let's move on to the number eight guy in the Pac-12 for the draft this year. This gentleman is from California. He has a twin brother. I think he's his twin brother.
I don't know if they're twins. They're brothers.
They're brothers. We're both on play for Oregon. Senior for the Oregon Ducks, linebacker Troy Dye stands at 6'3", 231, 32 1/4 arms, 9 3/8 on the hands. I don't have any combine information, but I'll run through some statisticals of the past few seasons. This is a guy, he came out of high school. I think he was only a 3-star. I think he started all 4 years from 2016 to this past year. I read down some of his numbers. It's 16. He had 92 total tackles, 17, 107, 18, 115 last year, 84, 57, 62, 67, 52. That's solo tackles, respectively, from 16 to 19. I look at some of the other stats here, a couple picks, a couple and a half sacks, nothing that's, outstanding, but size-wise, kind of the type of size for what you like out of your linebacker in today's NFL. And I will say this is a guy, again, when their defense was on the field and they had a decent defense, he was one of the main parts of it. His name is constantly called. He's all over the place. He was I think he was he inside? He was the quarterback of that defense, man.
When I thought about him,
you could tell that he had control of what was going on around him and his teammates.
This is kind of interesting because this is exactly what I thought of him. The first part of this, when I read this, is, he gets tackle production, which is why he shows up, because you see him all the time. But I saw really good football IQ, very rangy. Yeah. But this is interesting because this is something I would never know. The concern about his slight frame, this is coming off the combine thing, which is kind of interesting. His slight frame and difficulty keeping weight on could become a major stumbling block for him in the way teams view his pro potential. So, I don't really know how I would know unless someone told me that someone has trouble putting weight on, because we kind of look at some of these guys and are like, well, they can always put on weight. They're football players. All they do is lift and get in these eating and weight programs. But because he is kind of rubbing on the bottom weight of where you would want.
Yes.
That you have to be very athletic and rangy.
So he's not shorter. He should be able to pack on a few pounds of muscle.
But that's interesting. That would concern me if he couldn't put on weight, because, remember something too. College seasons are getting longer and longer, and we're getting 14 games in a season, and potentially with 15 games. But the NFL season is a guaranteed 16. And you see rookies get that end of the year burn where they struggle, and most players are losing anywhere from 10 to 20 pounds throughout a season because of the physical exertion and the lack of, being able to lift all the time because they're in the middle of recovery. So if a guy's struggling with that I guess when I read that, again, I don't want to knock him, but that concerns me, because then, and they say this, he'd have to play outside, which is where I would see him being, is outside if he can't put on weight, because that's going to be a challenge. I mean, that middle linebacker position is challenging, whether you're in a 3-4 or in a 4-3. You've got to be. But I see the ranginess and the instincts that do make me really like this kid. I guess now seeing that, I would say that is concerning, though, whether he can handle the rigors of an NFL season.
Yeah. All right. Well,
and I won't pretend to know that I know that that's a fact. It's just what was said.
Yeah. I mean, I will say he was productive in college, so hopefully he's able to take that to the NFL. If he's not, I think it'll show up very quickly that he's not able to handle.
Yep.
All right. The next guy, number 9 rated prospect out of the Pac-12 for the 2020 NFL Draft, is a senior from Washington, was an offensive guard for the Oregon Ducks, Mr. Shane Lemieux, at 6'4", 310, 32 1/4-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands. Ran a 5'11" at the combine. I don't see a bench, but his 20-yard shuttle was a 4.9. 3-cone was an 8.13. Here's what I can tell you, okay? That offensive line was, for the past 4 years, because I think this year most of them were seniors. I know they were all veterans. It was one of the, coming out at the beginning of the year, it was looked at to be one of the best offensive lines in college football. I think they ended up still being one of the top offensive lines in college football. That first game against Auburn that they played, I think it was neutral ground.
Yep. It was in Dallas.
Cotton Bowl, or no, it was
Jerry World.
Jerry World. So the first half of that game, one of the best defensive lines in college football in Auburn, and this was right out the gate, fresh note, and not banged up, first game. The Oregon Ducks offensive line owned them in the first half. Owned them.
Hence why we talked about with Justin Herbert, his ability to scan the field, because he had all day.
You have guys like, Derek Brown and what's the other kid coming out from Auburn on the D line?
Marlon Davidson.
I mean, these guys that could potentially go, two of those guys in the first round, definitely probably first 2 rounds for these two. Good players.
And those are interior guys.
They got owned. Now, I said the first half because they made their adjustments, and the second half, they still look good, but that's why I think Auburn ended up pulling it out, is that defensive line started to, impress their strength upon that offensive line. Nonetheless, this is an offensive line that this guy has been a constant on for the past 4 years. Okay, started all 52 games at left guards. People are moving around him, in and out. A lot of the same guys have been with them, which is great, but they did move guys on the line to different positions. This guy stayed in the same spot. I think for his size, he's he could probably pack on a little bit more for a guard just to help his anchor. He does not seem fast. My concern is especially with some of these numbers, all the way down to the 20-yard shuttle and the 3-cone, which is well over 8 seconds. Probably want to see it in the 7s, maybe high 7s. Doesn't seem to move that fast. His arms and his hands aren't that big. We know that can, for some cause problem, but he does have, his upper body seems to be strong. And again, this is not a one-hit one. This is a seasoned guy at his position. So if you're looking for interior offensive linemen in this draft, he's going to be up there. I'll look, but I bet you anything he's definitely top 10, if not top 5, as in the guard position.
Yeah, and you got to remember this team.
They have him as number 2.
Yeah, the way they ran the ball this year should tell you a lot about that. And they did it with a couple of running backs.
Between the tackles.
Yeah, it wasn't prolific
which
like
means
one guy.
Interior offensive line.
Yeah, so this was a team that ran a bunch of different ways. I think this guy, I like the way he plays. What I like is, it kind of reminds me, the talk about him is with, he's got a little bit of nastiness. It reminds me of a guard who played tackle at Oregon, who was a former Florida State baseball player, Kyle Long. Kyle Long went out there and played left tackle. And Kyle Long played the game at guard with the Bears like that. Unfortunately, his career got derailed by injury. But this is a guy that kind of plays like that. I think this guy's legit. I think this guy's a guard on your team for several years. Yep. Starting on the interior. That's just what I think. So let's talk about our next guy.
All right, we have 2 more guys in the top 11. Really, the next 2 guys are a little more exciting, but we'll want to try to wrap it up quick. I'll run down a few other names, and we'll be done. So this kid is we have him as 10 out of the Pac-12 in the draft. Woodland Hills, California, a senior for the USC Trojans, wide receiver, Mr. Michael Pittman Jr. at 6'4", 223, 32.5-inch arms, 9.25-inch hands, 4'5", 240, 13 reps on the bench, 36.5 vert, 121 on the broad. Vert is not bad, broad. Very productive. Again, we talked earlier when we were talking to Austin Jackson about, how they had to go through some quarterbacks on this team this past year. And regardless of who it was, this kid is very productive. I think he's a tall kid, but he's also, I think, a possession-type kid. Great with the ball in his hands, a yak guy. Talk to me about Mr. Pittman.
Well, here's what I would have said. What I was seeing of him and his projections up until the last couple of weeks, I would have said this kid's going to be one of the steal wide receivers.
Yeah. Top 10 wide out in this draft.
It's deep. This is a deep draft.
Yep.
Now he's getting there's some people pushing him to a first rounder. I think he's got late first round talent. I think he is probably, if he doesn't, is a suffer by comparison just because it's so deep. I mean, first of all, here's the thing I saw. When I watched USC play...
101 receptions this year, 1,275 yards, 11 TDs, okay? And again, I'm going to repeat it really quick. You're talking about multiple quarterbacks coming through. For the most part, it was Slovis, but multiple quarterbacks at different times in the year. And 101 receptions. So he was their go-to guy.
He was, and this was the whole point. Is what I loved is the guy manhandled people in the red zone. Manhandled them. That is hard to find. There's guys that are athletic. There's guys that can toe tap. There's guys that can high point. He manhandled guys off the line of scrimmage. This guy is going to be a red zone beast. I've seen him getting projected to the Packers, which I would absolutely hate. And he's huge. He's huge.
What else does he have that you like, sir?
He's got the pedigree. Pops played the ball.
That's
I
right.
like
I'm going to tee it up for you.
I like it. Listen, when I watch
pedigree,
guys,
who was his dad?
Michael Pittman, running back, Arizona Cardinals, I believe, for the most part.
Yep.
But he plays with a toughness. Again, you're talking about a broken USC program, and the guy stuck out to me. I did watch USC play quite a few times this year. It was interesting, especially when Slovis came in, and it was like, ooh, did they find like some lightning in a bottle with this kid? So we kind of started watching him a little bit more. Just he's a talented kid. I think he's legit. We always kind of said in the early receivers that we are seeing in the draft, none of them fit that prototypical top end, like size to speed to everything ratio. This kid kind of has it.
Yeah.
And look, you can't knock his productivity.
Right. And I don't know that he'll go in the first round, but I'd like to, depending on who is left, again, we need a wide out. I'm not going to take one in the first round because of what's available, but like at 4 in the second, now we're looking at that. Those are where we're going to be probably looking to see if there's
and the
some
point is,
wideouts
you
we
start
like.
to look at that from there. I think he starts to become a high valued pick. Just again, first round, you are running a risk because there are some things in his game that like any player
a lot of
that can scare you.
that you might like. So
you'd be moving ahead of some pretty talented guys by doing that.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the number 11 guy and the last guy that we're going to kind of talk a little bit in depth about. And we like this kid a lot.
Hammer.
The Hammer. 2020 NFL draft prospect number 11 ranked out of the Pac-12 is a young man from Florida, a senior running back, Utah Utes, Mr. Zachary Moss. Zach Moss.
Thank God he didn't go to Miami.
He's from that area. He's got family that's played this game, and I'm sure you'll talk to us about it. Moss, 5'9", 223, 31 and a fourth hands, 9 and a fourth, or 31 and a fourth arms. I did it again. 9 and a fourth hands, 4.65 40. Not great.
He's a little bit of a prodder. We kind of knew that, though.
But he does. He is. But he threw up 19 reps on the bench, and that's pretty decent. And you could tell. He's a tough runner. Let's see. Running through some stats. You're talking about a guy that was contributing from his freshman year, started the past 3 years. Let's see. He had the past 2 years, 179 attempts for just under 1,100 yards with 11 TDs. Last year, 1,400 plus yards on 235 attempts and 15 TDs. Mr. Zachary Moss. Seeing a lot of value in the running backs this year. Could be a little deep. This is a guy that, I think he could go in the second, but because of of it being deep, he might go third.
Yeah, here is if you can't say it better, steal it kind of thing. So I'm going to steal the overview on him. Number one, love his NFL comparison. Marion Barber. Remember not Marion Barber on the Bears, Marion Barber on the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. Yep.
He was just a kind of a hammer, not super shifty, but surprisingly shifty for the way that they play.
Yeah.
This is how they describe him. I think this is well written. Watching Moss's game tape is like watching an exercise in controlled violence on just about every carry. But his vision, balance, and patience and wiggle are additional skills that help make him a well-rounded runner. This part's interesting, too, because I didn't look at his stats as far as carries before this, but personnel evaluators for the NFL say there's some wear and tear that could limit the length of his career, which we've talked about that being a problem for running backs, especially interior running backs.
Sure.
Alabama being our big target, the way they run their running backs. He's projected a mid-rounder, a third, fourth, maybe fifth if something doesn't go his way.
Could be a great value right there.
I think he could be tremendous pick for somebody, and he's the kind of guy that even if you don't use him as a 3-down back, he's a guy that you want in the fourth quarter.
Nice.
You want him in the fourth quarter.
I like it.
And having that in the fourth quarter, if you could score
he's got a motor that seemed, even though they worked him a lot in games, it never stopped. You could see him in the fourth quarter moving just like he was in the first.
Yeah, I like him. He does kind of, in the way that he runs, a little bit more violent, and sometimes, just buries that head at the last second to just get that extra pound into you. Like he does that. But he's a little bit far more elusive than I think when you look at his natural running style. But when he has to, do a little bit of wiggle, he can do it. And I kind of like that. And to me, the big thing is when you're that type of runner, the two words they use, which are most important, and why I love my boy Jordan Howard when he played for the Bears. As much as he was not near as physically gifted as him, but he was patient and had great vision. If you can be patient and use your vision, NFL guys will line up the blocks for you.
Yeah.
Decent offensive lines will line up the blocks for you, but most of the running backs try to run past those blocks.
That tells me that,
him.
especially because he's not a burner, that he's confident in his strength.
Yep.
That he can wait for it to line up, and he's just, even if the hole starts to close or something happens, he's confident that he has the sheer strength at least to get a few yards out of it, just drive those legs. So that's good stuff. All right, that takes us to the end of the top 11, and I'll have Dave run them down right before the end. But a couple of names of note also coming out of the Pac-12 that we should mention. A safety for the Cal Bears, Mr. Ashton Davis. A linebacker for the Colorado Buffs, Davian Taylor. A safety from that good Utah defense, Mr. Terrell Burgess. He's a name I do know. Cornerback for UCLA, Darnay Holmes. A offensive center for the Washington Huskies, Nick Harris. This guy's name came up often this year and is, I think, actually, where is he in the edge rankings? Do you know? A edge rusher DN for that Utah Utes defense. He's showing up in the top 10. This kid is 6'3", 265, a senior. Bradley Anai. Okay, Bradley Anai. Interesting. A quarterback for the Washington State Cougs, Mr. Anthony Gordon.
Does he grow the mustache and try to follow in the footsteps?
He's friends with the shoe. I think he might be a little better of an NFL quarterback, surprisingly, than the shoe. And we haven't seen enough of the shoe, but another guy following in that Mike Leach offensive system, following behind Gardner Minshew, who comes over, for that 1 year and throws, tremendous stats up to vault him to get drafted in the NFL. And this is going to be, this kid's statistics are crazy, and that's just what my man, the mad scientist, does. This guy also, you'll know him too. He'll be taken. A defensive tackle for Utah, Lakai Fotu. That just sounds like a Utah Ute D lineman right there. Yeah. Lakai Fotu, D tackle, Utah Utes. Where's that guy from? I don't know. This guy I brought up, he's late. Guy? Yeah. Right there. Oh, sorry. Oregon. Offensive tackle. Another one of that seasoned offensive line. Yep. Calvin Throckmorton. And the last guy who's out there, whose name you should know, I think he will get drafted, but just late, is a running back for the Arizona State University Sun Devils, Mr. Eno Benjamin. So that wraps up the Pac-12. Dave, one time before we get out of here, 2020 NFL draft prospects from the Pac-12. Our top 11 were?
Top 11. Number 1. Justin Herbert, QB out of Oregon. Number 2, Austin Jackson, offensive tackle, USC. Number 3, Laviska Shenault, wide receiver, Colorado. Number 4, Jalen Johnson, cornerback out of Utah. Number 5, Jacob Eason, quarterback, Washington. Number 6, Hunter Bryant, tight end out of Washington. Number 7, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver, Arizona State. Number 8, Troy Dye, linebacker for Oregon. Number 9, Shane Lemieux, offensive guard out of Oregon. Number 10, Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver, USC. And number 11, Zach Moss, running back out of Utah.
That's going to get it for the NFL draft prospects in this year's draft. out of all the Power 5. We'll cut this up and we'll get at you with some other folks that we haven't mentioned in the group of 5, the independents, so forth. But it was good, man. It took a while, but I like it. It was good. I love college football. I'm excited for draft. See you next time on the gridiron. See ya.